The story in the Doom series is loved by fans, but it has a complicated history. While the Doom series often pushes story aside in favor of gameplay, the plot has definitely always been there. There's a surprising amount of it too. Although it hasn't really presented itself front and center until now, the lore has developed tremendously, to an extent that it may be hard to follow. There's an extensive amount of weapons, characters, worlds, plot elements, and codex entries that made the franchise rather convoluted. That isn't necessarily a bad thing. That is expected for a series with many installments that tell such an expansive tale. It can even be fun to piece it all together. However, where there is a lot of writing, there is also a lot of rewriting, as an author may take a narrative in a different direction. But if not written thoroughly enough, stories may fall victim to mistakes. Sometimes, certain details are written in that conflict with others. These contradictions, these plot holes, are formed when a plot element goes against specific logic that was established at a different time. This is typically the result of retconning, or just a general error in storytelling. Many fictional franchises can find themselves holding unexplainable details in their narrative that will probably end up getting swept under the rug, and, as you all know, the Doom franchise is no different. Although they are definitely written with care, the stories in these games don't come without their mistakes. Across the series, there have been many instances in which parts of the story took an unexpected turn in another direction, or specific things generally just didn't add up. The story is already complex as it is, but to some players, it is these flaws and errors that make the overall Doom story difficult to follow.
The great city of Taras Nabad, site of the first recorded demon attack in Argent.
There is a lot to discuss in this series regarding this, as it has always been a talking point, but with the latest Doom release, even more plot holes emerged. There is a problem with prequels. The overall plot of a series can become complicated if a prequel claims things that fall out of line of what has been pre-established. In the Dark Ages, a lot of new lore was provided to this universe. The narrative was prominent this time around, mostly displayed in cinematics rather than the codex. Taking place before the events of the other two games in the trilogy, we witness a tale of the Doomslayer during his time with the Night Sentinels. This was established multiple games ago. However, there are still a few details presented in this game that completely contradict what we were previously told. So, that being said, today, I'll explore a few of the newer plot holes and retcons that came with the Dark Ages specifically. Some of these inconsistencies are the result of a retcon, with others being general errors. Regardless, some of these may be fixable, or just something that is still being built up, so I'll give my input on how to potentially fix them. These plot holes do vary in significance. Although none of these quote-unquote errors are the most problematic of the series, they are still interesting to discuss. Just to note, I personally enjoyed the story in the Dark Ages, so I am in no way throwing shade at it. This is just an analysis. Anyways, let's have fun and dive in.
Only a Slayer's Crucible blade can stop a Titan.
The Titans and their vulnerability. To kick off this list, I'll go over one of the more obvious ones. This speculated plot hole isn't new at all, as it's been around since Doom Eternal. Doom 2016 is when we first learned about the colossal beasts that roamed Hell. There, they appeared across various hellscapes and wastelands, dead. A live Titan wasn't revealed until Doom Eternal. However, in that game, we are told in the narrative that the only way to stop one is with the Slayer's Crucible. That is why the Doomslayer left his blade in the chest of the Dreadnought Titan that attacked Taras Nabad, and why he further used the same Crucible to destroy the Icon of Sin. However, across various hellscapes, and in Argenta history, it is shown that these Titans can in fact die from simpler methods. There was no true explanation, but the general consensus was that perhaps the energy blades wielded by the Atlan's were the explanation to it. But, in the Dark Ages, not only are there far more Titans seen regularly, but they also fall left and right, and from more casual methods than the use of a Crucible. Heck, I wouldn't even be talking about this if it weren't for the fact that multiple Titans are slain in the campaign from a simple turret. Seriously? The Slayers saved a city in what was considered a catastrophic event, involving only one. These Titans were made out to be a big deal, but here, they are dropped casually. No Crucible, no energy weapons, just brute strength and conventional weaponry. So much for their immortality. This has been a large point of confusion in the modern trilogy. Though there is not much of an explanation, this plot hole could be resolved with a little thought. It's confusing because dead Titans are shown frequently, and they don't seem to be anything less than lifeless. And, although it was possibly implied that the Dreadnought Titan was still alive. Perhaps what Samuel's words, in Eternal, were insinuating was that the Crucible is the only way to truly slay a Titan, as in, they can't be taken back to Hell, resurrected, or revived in any form. That still doesn't really explain these completely lifeless ones, but it's the best explanation here. Still, in the Dark Ages, killing them so casually, and in large amounts, with the use of conventional weaponry, seems to undermine the known nature of the Titan's sheer power. Regardless, it's not that big of a deal. I'll take a story inconsistency if it means I can experience awesome moments like this. The Heart of Argent. The Cosmic Realm is one of the big Doom retcons that is completely welcomed. The origins of the Wraiths and the World Spear have been hinted at since the release of Ancient Gods Part 2. Although it was initially stated that the spear fell from the heavens, that was simply a broad statement, and the complete lore and backstory still fit perfectly with the Cosmic Realm, like pieces of a puzzle. But that's not what I'm here to talk about regarding the Cosmic Realm. I'm talking about the Heart of Argent, and what it contains. Because of its importance, the ancient Argento relic is sought out by Prince Azarek, and is a key component to the story. The heart was safeguarded by the Night Sentinels inside a temple in the holy city of Eratum. Little was known about the true power of the artifact, other than the fact that it contained the soul of the last Wraith. It is unknown how or why the Wraith spirit is contained through both the artifact and Thera, but the issue here is the fact that this is the last Wraith? It goes without saying that this is a complete contradiction from what's already been established. We already know that more Wraiths reside inside the World Spear, but that's unknown to the Sentinels. So, what does this mean? The soul of the last Wraith? As in, the final Wraith of Argent Denor that did awaken from the World Spear? The issue here is that it goes completely against a huge pivotal moment of the entire series, the betrayal. In return for the resurrection of his son Merrick, Commander Valen was to first grant the Daig priests access to the slumbering Wraiths and their power. How does the Heart of Argent contain the soul of the seemingly dead last Wraith if there are multiple known Wraiths that reside inside their vault? The Elemental Sepulchre. They were stated to be slumbering or sleeping, not dead, so this clearly wasn't the last Wraith. This mistake may be hard to downplay, but there are a few possibilities here. Is this an error, or are more Wraiths yet to be discovered at this point in the timeline? Well, I don't know if that's the case, because it is never stated that the Sentinels believe them to be extinct. A fraction of the Argenta, including Daig Lorik, still choose to worship the Wraiths over the Makers. I think it would have made things less confusing if id Software instead made the heart contain the soul of the first Wraith, and it would have been more impactful in terms of scale as well. Another understanding is that maybe last Wraith was referring to previous Wraith, but due to the vagueness of the heart's backstory, it's hard to say. Plus, that might imply that there's only ever one at a time, which probably isn't the case. Regardless of the explanation, many players have picked up on this inconsistency. How is this the last Wraith? Although this is one of the more obvious plot holes, it isn't a guaranteed one. Maybe it is just misunderstood. So, like I said, perhaps the Elemental Wraiths have been gone, or missing for a certain period of time, and the Sentinels simply have yet to discover the ones that will be in the betrayal. We'll probably learn more about the Heart of Argent in the DLC anyways. What happened to the Slayer's Wintherin? Many elements of the Dark Ages, and the Sentinel Wars overall, were teased back in Eternal, as well as its expansions. Of those teases was the Slayer's Dragon. In Ancient Gods Part 2, on his journey to the World Spear, the Doomslayer lights the Torch of Kings to signal all of his mission. Upon doing so, the Marine is met with his dragon that he used in battle back in the days of the Sentinels, and the beast aids him in reaching his destination. You may have noticed that isn't Surratt. That's because Surratt used to not be a thing. Originally teased back in Ancient Gods, the Slayer's Wintherin was claimed to be the dragon that the Slayer used back in the Sentinel Wars, as it even bore his mark. However, perhaps as a retcon, the Marine was given a different dragon in the Dark Ages, as Surratt was introduced. The Mecha Dragon is noticeably different from the Slayer's Wintherin, even far beyond it in scale. While we all love Surratt, he wasn't initially planned to be the Slayer's dragon. However, Surratt did meet his end just a few short years after the Slayer arrived in Argent Denor. So, because there's at least a few years of war left, who's to say that the Slayer won't find himself another dragon? While he will never be as great as Surratt, the Slayer's Wintherin may have time to shine. Heck, it would even give us a reason to have more dragon segments. So, while it is still an inconsistency, this one does have a possible explanation. Maybe this is just the dragon that the Slayer claims after Surratt.
The lost City of Hebeth. This was before your time with the Sentinels.
There are many issues that the Dark Ages raised regarding Hebeth. First showcased in the Mars Core mission of Doom Eternal, the lost city of Hebeth was one of the few settlements that the Sentinels colonized in the Earth dimension. The ancient Sentinel city had multiple purposes, but it originally acted as a large port for interdimensional travel. Located near the core of Mars, the city was breached by the Slayer in order for him to access a slipgate leading to Sentinel Prime. The Dark Ages not only allowed players to finally see this place in action, but it also added a more extensive backstory to Hebeth. The Sentinel City originally acted as a port, but now it also houses the transdimensional barrier against the demons. It is even the location of a massive weapons research and development facility. The Slayer visits the outpost in the Dark Ages to save the barrier from a demonic onslaught. Although it is welcomed, this expansion on the lore doesn't come without multiple contradictions. First of all, you may notice that this is now called the planet of Hebeth. In Eternal, it was made very clear that this was the name of a city, not a planet, as it was stated that Hebeth was among the many cities lost during the Sentinels' war against Hell. The cinematics in the Dark Ages very clearly state that Hebeth is a planet, but wait, the Codex is unclear on that, vaguely stating that it is located on a distant planet. So we still don't know if it's just a city or not, and I guess Hebeth doesn't know what it is either. Another contradiction with Hebeth is that it was explicitly stated in Eternal to be far before our time with the Sentinels. However, in the Dark Ages, the planet was accessible and utilized during the Slayer's time with them. Heck, the transdimensional barrier, the most important feature of Hebeth, was constructed after the arrival of the Slayer, strictly to ward off the demons that followed him to Argent, so definitely not before his time with the Sentinels. The last plot hole with Hebeth is its location. It is stated to be a distant planet from Argent. The Sentinels chose this place to house the transdimensional barrier for multiple reasons, but its distance from their home planet was one of them. How is the planet far distant from Argent if, in Eternal, it is shown to be the next planet over, and very close at that? And that's not even mentioning the fact that Mars is part of the Earth dimension, not the same as Argent. How is it part of two dimensions at once? Incidentally, how did the Sentinels even discover Mars, located across dimensions, if it wasn't the Doomslayer who introduced them to the planet? There's a lot to question here. Anyways, to sum this one up, Hebeth is confusing. But what? Do we just call this the lost planet of Hebeth now? So the last two plot holes I'll be talking about are a bit less important, but they are still interesting to analyze and get you thinking. The Umbral Plains have been a complicated part of the story. This region of Hell has been around since Doom 2016, and is mentioned in all parts of modern Doom, including the Codexes, Slayer Testaments, and even the Lorebook. In 2016, the location is said to be a wasteland in Hell, near the Cadinger Sanctum and the Great Step. The Doomslayer roamed this area after the betrayal, and prior to his entombment in the sarcophagus. Across the games, there is an emphasis that many beasts and demons dwell here. However, this was softly retconned in Eternal to actually be part of Argent. It was stated that the World Spear struck Argent pole to pole, from the cold wastes of the Umbral Plains to the swamps of Ironfang. This brought some confusion, some minor inconsistencies, but the lore enthusiasts eventually chalked it up to just be a region of Argent that perhaps was pulled into Hell entirely, following the betrayal, similar to the Well. So, perhaps the Slayer scoured the Umbral Plains shortly after it was absorbed by Hell. It still challenges some parts of the lore, but it can be brushed off. Case closed, right? Well, not really. This debate resurfaces in the Dark Ages. Now, the Codex insists again that the Umbral Plains is a region located in Hell, not from Argent. Some demons, such as Pinkies, originate from the Hellfire Pits of the Umbral Plains. This contradicts Eternal's claim that the Umbral Plains were originally part of the Sentinel's homeworld, because the Dark Ages takes place years before Hell consumes the realm. This plot hole goes back to the original idea that this place is simply a certain location in Hell. This is only an issue because of what Eternal retconned it to be, as now it's apparently rewritten back. The Umbral Plains are confusing altogether. It only matters because this place has a deep history and is well established in the lore. So why is it so complicated? I really don't have a fix for this one. Again, this is another smaller one. As I mentioned earlier, the cosmic realm in the Doom universe was established in a way that near perfectly fits in with the story. I say near perfectly because there are a few small things it tampers with. So, the union between Hell and the cosmic realm has been present throughout the entirety of the modern Doom trilogy. After Azric's alliance with the Witch, the Eldritch magic and power have had some influence on the demons, as it is now part of Hell's. Although contradicting some minor things, such as the Hellgrowth tentacles, the Cosmic Realm is to blame for most of the Cyclopean elements and tentacle designs that we've already seen. Apparently, the Nightmare Imp is also of these dark creatures, born from the influence of the Cosmic Realm. This is quite interesting, because these imps have been around since Doom 64. The invisibility, the color palette, the purple energy, it all checks out. However, that would imply that the Cosmic Realm was involved with Hell back during Doom 64, which doesn't exactly work. At that point in the timeline, the unholy union between the two realms had not yet taken place. That alliance doesn't happen until after the Slayer arrives in Argent, and the demons follow, which occurs post-Doom 64. In the Dark Ages, Prince Azric first allies with the witch Ulsamir, because the Sentinel's homeworld has connections to her realm. He seeks out the ancient secrets of the Argenta, the power of the Wraiths, and the heart of Argent to gain the upper hand in the war against the Sentinels. Again, this union was struck because of the Slayer unintentionally causing Hell to discover Argent. Don't get me wrong, it's awesome to see the Nightmare Imps return, especially with more lore, but the specifics just don't exactly line up. It's a considerable flaw if you're trying to understand the Cosmic Realm's involvement in the Doom universe. This minor type of inconsistency regarding enemy background codexes is seen with other similar cases, such as the tentacles originally stated to form from Hellgrowth, not the Cosmic Realm. But anyways, like I said, I'm glad these guys returned, so it's not that deep. That's most of the contradictions that are worth mentioning. There's more that could be worth a discussion, such as the Slayer not being the leader of the Night Sentinels, like he was said to be, but that's probably just something we have yet to see. Not every error is definite. Some things may be explained eventually. There is still much time left in this prequel era. The Doom series has a lot of known plot holes, and the impact on the story they have do vary. These issues are sometimes what make the narrative confusing and difficult to follow for some. While the Dark Ages didn't have as many story issues as the previous entry, some still exist, and it's interesting to explore them and figure out how to interpret them into the rest of the story. Many stories tend to find themselves having issues and minor errors. However, it says a lot about a series if the player cares to dig deeper and piece the puzzle together. The story must be that engaging enough if the player invests that much time with it. That being said, this is the Doom franchise. Who cares? Just have fun. The story is very deep, very complex, but when there's an error in the established logic, it's best to not overthink it. Just play the game, go to incredible places, and do some insane things. Thanks for watching. Plot holes in the Doom series have always been a very interesting topic of discussion. I plan on making multiple parts to this, as there are bigger plot holes in other entries of the franchise. Anyways, please let me know what you think in the comments, or if you know of any other plot holes. Until next time.